We will now have our first industry panel, who will look at how digitalisation and technology is changing jobs in the middle and back office. On the panel will be Mr. Brendan Carney, CEO of Citibank Singapore Limited and Global Consumer Banking ASEAN Cluster Head. We also have Ms. Susan Cheong, Managing Director and Head of Talent Acquisition Group, DBS Bank, from DBS Bank, and Ms. Susan Hui, Head of Global Tech and Ops from UOB. The discussion will be moderated by Mr. Ng Nam Sin, CEO of the IBF. The audience is encouraged to post any questions you have for the panel in the Q&A box, and we will address these live at an appropriate juncture.
Thank you, Florence, again. Very good morning to everyone. Welcome to SGUnited Financial Services Jobs and Skills Fair 2020. So my name is Nam Sin. I'm the CEO of the Institute of Banking and Finance. We have three very prominent and well-known professionals in the finance sector. Ms. Susan Hui from UOB, Ms. Susan Cheong from DBS, and Mr. Brendan Carney of Citibank. So very pleased to have everyone on this panel. So today's topic is about the impact of technology, or how banks have adapted technology, have impacted jobs. So before I invite our panelists to share their views and perspective, maybe let me provide some background. A small trivia here: financial services is probably most susceptible, or I should say most advanced in using technology. I found out that the first electronic fund transfer was executed almost 160 years ago in 1860 by none other than Western Union Bank. So very, very progressive, very, very advanced. So we can assume that the financial sector is probably more ready than any other industry in terms of utilizing technology. So the question on most people's mind is whether technology will destroy jobs or create jobs. Collectively, I think among professionals here, we think such a question misses a key point. I think technology affects mainly tasks within the job rather than displacing entire jobs. So the impact of technology, we think, is more about transforming jobs, and workers have to be reskilled continuously to adapt to new and transformed jobs. So that is the first point. However, I think while it is safe to say that few jobs are entirely displaced by technology, the same can be argued that few jobs will be unaffected by technology. So that's my quick background and context. The first question I thought we'd like to invite our panelists to share is, how has technology impacted your businesses? Has it helped? And are you also have to adopt or adapt to the new normal? We heard that the COVID-19 has accelerated the use of technology. So what is the experience and the journey in your bank? So maybe to start off, can I invite Susan Hui to start off? You're mute. Susan, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Namsin. I think Jacqueline has just shared the statistics, I mean, grim as it may be. But the fact of the matter is, I think this COVID will come to pass, and this is where we are trying to look at the future to see how we can create jobs and preserve jobs for Singaporeans in the banking sector. I think this whole pandemic situation, if not for anything, has strengthened the resolve that technology is here to stay, and it helps enable all our services. So actually, from our front office to the middle office, not just the back office and technology team, with everybody working from home, services are able to flow. In fact, many of our front office has been engaging our clients through virtually through such means as well. And it just showed the capability of what it is. But it does mean that the nature of jobs and how we will work in the future when, we all things goes back to the new normal, I think there will be even stronger resolve to say that, technology brings about conveniences, embraces, I think, the different needs of the community in our lifestyle, the need to be able to work from home and all that. So it set the stage for all possibilities. But more importantly, I think during this pandemic, we have shown that our local banking institutions has invested in the right technology and the technology, because we saw a massive increase in online transactions, payments, be it in consumers or corporates or trades, as businesses begins to open up. Yeah. So that, I think, sets the stage for every one of us. So for those who are interested in coming, joining or the banking industry, or trying to see how the banking industry, I would say, is to embrace this change, right? That all of us have the experience to know what it takes to make something work. Because at the end of the day, banking is still about risk and risk management, be it processes, controls, be it assessing credit, be it looking at our financial returns or looking at our gap positions and so on. While technology can come in and make all that a lot more efficient, there still needs, as what Nam Sim says, the role of technology will change our jobs. While it doesn't take all the jobs, all our jobs will be impacted, be it whether you are a software developer to a front office to a trader. Right? So the question is, how do we embrace and how do we add value with the experience and knowledge for those who are experienced in the banking industry, and for those who are joining new, is to have a fresh young mind to say, what value can you add and how do you use technology to move things along? I don't know whether I've answered that question in a way, Nam Sim.
Yeah, thank you, Susan.
I think all jobs will be impacted, yes.
Yes, I think especially the point about how do we inculcate a fresh young minds regardless of our biological age, so to say. Yeah, thank you so much, Susan. So maybe I now pass on to Ms. Susan Chong to share her perspective.
Namsin. Morning, everyone. I think not very different from what Susan from UOB actually shared. What it has shown us in the last 4 months is the speed of acceleration of the take-up of technology by everyone. So 2 fronts maybe I could share. The first front would be how it has impacted us working in a bank, right? We really truly in the last 4 months actually changed the way we've been working. I think Susan is correct in saying that it has shown that banks, we are already with the technological capabilities that we have. It was always there, the ability to actually work virtually with all the tools, like what we're doing now through Zoom and all that. It's just that people were not taking it up at the speed that we have seen in the last 3-4 months. Today is like close to 80%, of people are actually working from home, like most of us are today. So that has actually taught us that when we go back to what we were previously, it might never be the same again. It's probably not 100% working from home, but certainly not what it used to be. So that's really the first insight. And of course, we might no longer need to actually be together all the time in a physical space. So that's fundamentally has changed us. Of course, the other part to it will be, for example, a very big part of our curriculum in terms of learning. Everything has been shifted online overnight. So, and I personally think that is probably where it would stay for a long time. The classroom trainings, how we used to have large meetings, and like for DBS, we ran our AGM online virtually. We had an Asian Insights conference, which used to be massive congregation of people in the auditorium, but it was all done virtually online across countries. So it has really shown us the capability and the power of technology and how people were willing to actually take a step at it in such a large scale setting. So that also has actually changed us a lot. The last piece really would be how we conduct our banking business, how our customers has also moved, in an accelerated manner along with us. It probably was never easy in having all our customers actually take on the digital path in the banking side, how they do transactions, even tele-advisory, for example. It never used to be that much done virtually or online, but things had actually totally changed very much in the last few months. So I think this has actually set the scene in terms of how things are changing. And exactly to Susan's point, that means that all of us who are working in the banking or financial sector, we then need to be able to survive in such a different environment from what it used to be, and how we used to conduct our work, how we used to conduct our business.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, no, I think the point about having to move the customer along is a very important point, and it's not an easy job, right? Banks or financial institutions may want to experiment with the latest technology and payments in transactions, right? But some customers are averse to risk and technology. I still have some friends who say, I would never use digital payments. They prefer checks, right? So that is a very important point. How do we move them along, right? So Brandon, your perspective.
Thank you, Namsen. And it's a pleasure to be here. It's nice to be on this panel with Susan and Susan. I echo their comments on on the impact of COVID on our work style. If you had told me a few months ago that I would have been working at home, largely 80% of my time, doing a conference like this one virtually, I never would have believed it. But I think COVID has opened our eyes to the potential for work from home, and like most banks, we're 75-80% work from home even today. So I think, but I would like to focus on the more customer facing side, and just emphasize that for all banks, including Citi, these digital trends are not new. I think they are accelerated under COVID. But if you look even pre-COVID, on a daily basis in Citi, and we have a smaller branch network. We're not a big physical network bank anywhere. And so we've always bet more on digital in our strategy. But on a daily basis in Singapore, we would get somewhere around 1,000 visits to our branch network. And at the same time, we would have 75,000 unique visitors just on our mobile app in the same day. And so clearly, our customers are moving digitally. And some of them, there is a segment that we see a lot that, they tend to come to the branches because they're more digitally stubborn, I would say. They have habits and they prefer to come to the branch. They like to use checks. But I think the vast majority of most of our consumer banking populations in Singapore, because it is such an advanced economy, digital payments are so advanced here. Mobile networks are very advanced. My info, digital tools are very advanced. I think we're seeing more and more customers migrate their behavior online or onto an app. And I think in a lot of ways, as a bank, we're just trying to keep up and make sure that we stay relevant to customers. Now, what I would say, and I would firmly echo what everyone has said, our view in Citi is not that jobs will go away, but they will change. They will change. So, my daughter, I'll tell you a story. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she found my CD collection. I don't know, like my music collection, my CDs. And she asked me, she said, what are these? And I said, well, this is music. She said, and she said, well, I don't understand. I said, well, you take this, you put it in the machine, and then it would play it for you. And she's like, well, how would you get it? I said, well, you would go to a store and you would buy the CD. And she looked at me and she said, but didn't you have Spotify? And and so so the point I'm making is that the changes that we're seeing in banking are not unique. I mean, look at the changes in retail, in grocery, in food delivery, in music. I think every industry is experiencing these kind of changes, which are largely driven by changes in customer behavior. So we view that as jobs change, it's on us as an institution to reskill our people and to help them adapt to the new reality and give them the right skills for the future. So I think we'll be seeing less processing jobs, less processing of paper, less people taking phone calls, but more relationship management, more helping customers navigate, more helping customers maintain their digital credentials. One of the biggest calls we get in our call center today, and this is probably true at UOB and DBS, is I lost my digital access. I've been locked out of my account. I don't know, can you help me, restore my login access? It's one of the biggest conversations we have. So we've taken, our traditional Citi phone operators that were more service oriented, and we've re-skilled them into digital ambassadors. So that's a whole new job that we never had before. We've done that on the phone. We've done that with a lot of our employees that are sitting in our physical branches. They used to be there to help process transactions, and now they're there to help customers enroll digitally and navigate what they need to do. So we do think that jobs will change, but it's on us, working with IBF and the retraining and the reskilling program, the professional conversion program, to really bring our teams with us, because they've got a lot of knowledge. They know how to deal with customers. There's a lot of knowledge and experience that we don't want to lose, and we want to bring them to the new skills that we need.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. The point about professional conversion program is a very good one. I think Jacqueline mentioned earlier that the major financial institutions in Singapore, including UOB, DBS, and Citi, has committed to reskill and retrain about 5,000 of their staff. One of the more successful professional conversion program is on consumer banking. So both UOB, DBS, and Citibank has been major supporters. So the old job of bank tellers, they have been retrained to become digital ambassadors. And as Brandon said, they are there to so-called advise their clients on how to access their digital platforms, and also go into areas like client advisory, client management. So, transform into more meaningful work, and where the employability runway is much, much longer, so to say. Yeah. Another point, another trivial for Citibank, Brandon, is I know Citibank for the longest time. I know some of your predecessors. One of your very, very early predecessors, almost like 20 years ago, already then he said, branches are for birds. So a very interesting quote. So maybe let us move a bit closer to our topic for today. So today's topic focuses on impact of technology on mid-back office roles, right? So these are roles where you're involved in transaction, clearing, settlement, and some say it's harder to transform because you run them like a factory. You may not have time to so-called bring your workers away for them to be reskilled, retrained. So for these particular roles, how do you prepare your workforce and help them adapt to transformation? So maybe I ask Brandon to start off. Both Citibank, DBS, and UOB has got a huge mid-back office in Singapore.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. And for us, it's really about having a forward-looking vision about what kind of work will be important in the future. And again, this is something that we work very closely with IBF to identify those skills and to really make sure that we are providing our teams with that training that prepares them as their jobs evolve, even before the jobs really get impacted. I mean, as an example, we are seeing less and less phone calls, into our call center. Now we could, as a management team, say, well, we just need fewer operators, and so we'll just gradually reduce the size of that team. But these are experienced frontline people that know how to deal with customers, that know how to give advice. And so this was the digital ambassador program was just obvious to us, rather than sort of say, okay, well, people aren't calling for service anymore, they're really calling for their digital access. It's okay, what's the curriculum? What would these staff need in order to be able to really fully service and help our customers as a digital ambassador, and making sure that they have those skills. So we ran a pilot program to say, okay, this is our pilot training. It's IBF accredited, and then now we have a number of staff who have gone through that, so that we have a core curriculum that we know that as certain types of interactions decrease over the phone, we can retrain people and shift them to other types of interactions. So I think it's really about being proactive and thinking a couple steps ahead in terms of how the work is going to migrate and how the work is going to change. And I think, again, IBF is very helpful. The discussions that we have in the consumer working group are very helpful in terms of framing our thinking about what are the skills that are going to be more necessary as we move into the future.
Sorry, I got cut off momentarily.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay, maybe Susan Hui, since you are head of operations, maybe you could provide us your perspective.
Yeah, just to, add to what Brendan from Citi has said, right? If you think about how the jobs has migrated, let's not talk even today, which the jobs are being, some of the routine work where machines, robots, the repetitive work can be handled, especially as we do a lot more digital channels where customers are doing the transactions all the way to the back, right? But if you think back in the 90s, Namsin, and early 2000, many of our banking institutions, not so much the local banks, but many of our foreign institutions in Singapore were offshoring some of the jobs outside of Singapore anyway. And they were traditionally starting with the back office, right? And even some call centers were operated outside of Singapore and all that. So the displacement of jobs and all that, where labor cost efficiencies has always been in the play. It's just that in this digital age, it's accelerated. But even those jobs that are offshore are no longer safe, right? Because those jobs can disappear. So we have to put that perspective in mind. But I like to add to what Brendan and what Namsin has said earlier. Our operations colleagues have vast knowledge. Think about trades, letters of credits, that now you have to advise whether it's a letter of credit from which country, or should you go and open accounts? What are the risks and some of the things that you have looked through? Our compliance or AML regime around the world has been risen many folds. The ability to advise the clients what's the right thing to do with their documents, their ports, their vessels, what do they need to check to make sure that they stay above board and make sure their transactions are safe and to be conducted. A tremendous experience that can never be replaced. So rather than processing, I would say they can really easily go in and partner and start advisory to build up those value to partner our front office relationship managers as they work with their clients to advise the clients how they could proceed. And in a more complex environment, their skills, their knowledge, actually it's their knowledge that will be really valuable. Our advice within UOB, what we are trying to do is to see how we can move more and more of our back office to make sure they have good rotation around the various products and processes. Because at the end of the day, when a customer comes in, when they have a set of issues, their issues are usually not so narrow. And you need to be able to navigate to understand what they need and to be able to advise. But more than not, right now, even in Singapore, we have many generations of customers, right? Customers pre-Spotify days, the Spotify converts, as well as the Spotify natives, how's that? But we have to bring the pre-Spotify customers along, but some of them will find time to adjust. But we have to change some of these processes to stay relevant. And many of our operations or even mid-office colleagues actually understood all the risks and controls and processes necessary. So even as we digitize this process, their knowledge to help in process re-engineering, redesign from a customer point of view, from a bank point of view, from a risk prudential point of view, and all that, has so much experience to bear. And that's what we are trying to bring into the teams as we build up agile teams to look at redesigning work. You need now, customer engineers, you need data engineers, you need process engineers, you need risk engineers, you need compliance engineers. And when I say engineers, I don't mean technology engineers. I'm talking about processes, right? Coding is only, or the use of technology is one aspect. And after that, with all that, the technology teams can develop those. But you need actually everybody to come together to create that holistic view in order to create. So I would say that for our operations colleagues, what is important is for them to keep growing and broadening and deepening that knowledge, not just in one product, but across several product lines. And because from there, they can start applying. That's how I would see, and encourage our operations colleagues to grow their career as opportunities evolve. And when digital processes gets automated, it frees up capacity for training. And the good thing in Singapore is the enormous training grants that we have, and the opportunity then to create those training development platforms and opportunities for us there.
Thank you, Susan. I think you raised a very important point about the transformed roles of the mid and back office professionals. It is very aligned with a study that was commissioned by IBM and MAS, done by Ernst & Young. The report, with the participation and input of our major banks here, of course, basically said the same thing as what Susan, you've mentioned, that mid-back office professionals now also have to be customer-oriented, right? So they are using their knowledge of the processes to better service customer and provide a better customer user experience. So that is one. Secondly, instead of doing the very repetitive routine work, they now elevate themselves to look at process excellence, right? How to optimize processes, how to bring things together, how to engage with the different internal and external stakeholders. And then the third point is they are probably one of the better people to talk about business assurance, right? Because they look at the entire processes. And when it comes to processes, there's a lot of operational risk, technology risk. They're probably the best person to do that. So I think for our audience, I think this is probably not immediately obvious. In the past, I think the choice between mid-back office and front office, people prefer to choose front office, right? But now I think the game has changed quite a bit. Even if you're in the back office, you have to deal with customers, and the job is so much more, I would say, meaningful, so to say, right? DBS have one of your major operations also based in Singapore. So what is Susan Chong's perspective?
I think, Namsim, echoing what Susan mentioned, right? It is truly the case whereby we need to look at our colleagues in the operations team and extract the kind of value and the experience they have in actually helping us move everyone up the value chain. Like you correctly pointed out, I think what we're trying to do here is actually more to reform, the job and the task with the help of technology and digitalization. What used to be manual processes are now digitalized. So for example, if I used to be operations staff, I might do data entry. But now with the use of technology, OCR, scanners and all that, I actually half my time, or actually more than that, when getting that task done. So I transform my role into something value adding. I can then help the customers troubleshoot, right? Exactly understanding where the customer pain points are, what's your job to be done as a customer, and I value add along that path. And operations experience is something that cannot be easily learned overnight. The complexity of the whole entire value chain cannot be replicated, into an engine if you do not even have the domain experience. And that's the value of our colleagues in the operations team. And you are really right. For a bank, from our perspective, the value that we have in our current operations team is truly about, from what you understand, how do we then help govern the risk around operational transactions in the banking industry? So the value of AML, KYC and all that, you can never build an algorithm without even knowing from your experiences. And that is truly how we actually bring together the beauty of the people, their knowledge, using technology and to do that. So what it actually requires is for us in operations, for example, we have the knowledge, the domain knowledge. We then need to open ourselves up with a digital mindset and look at tools. How do then I marry the use of tools to actually help me along the way? And as a result, the synergy will then provide more to the end customers and of course to the bank eventually that we're working for. So that's truly how we look at it as well.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah. So before I move on to the next questions, there's a chat box here. So I think it's time to invite our audience to post their questions on the chat box. We have more than 450 participants today, so very large size of participants here. So please start to post your questions on the chat box while we move on to the next questions, and then after that hopefully we can come to respond to some of your questions. We talk about transforming processes. We talk about how they have changed with technology, right? So business transformation, process transformation is very important, but it can only be successful if it's also accompanied by workforce transformation. So they must go hand in hand. So what are the challenges the banks face when it comes to pushing for workforce transformation? We heard that it's important to also inculcate mindset change. However, how do you bring different stakeholders along? Some people will say, I'm too old to learn technology. Some will say, technology is not my cup of tea. And then some will say, I worked for the bank for so many years, surely my role cannot change. So how do you, manage challenges, and what are some of these challenges? Brendan, maybe we can ask you to start.
Sure. Yeah. Look, I think it's a great question, because transforming your organization really starts with people, and we do see. And I would comment on in this COVID environment, I think the new normal of work that we're going to see going forward is going to be a much more right now where I think most companies are about 80% work from home right now, which is fine, and it's worked, and it's gotten us through this peak period of of the challenge. But as we think about going forward, how do we hire new employees and make sure that they carry the culture as well? How do we make this transformation happen where so much of that communication and hearing the feedback and getting buy-in from your different stakeholders, including your employees, a lot of that it tends to be traditionally face-to-face. Like my leadership skill set as a manager is a face-to-face leadership skill set. I can talk in front of a group. I like to be in a room where there's energy, and I can run a meeting very well. But my social media skills in terms of generating energy and excitement, through WhatsApp, learning how to use Zoom was a bit, a challenge for me. So, when I talk to my team about this, they, and there is this notion of like, look, I just don't want to change, because I've been doing this job for 20 years, and why should I have to change? Even my job, I'm the CEO of Citibank Singapore. My job changes every day. And I have to learn new things every day. And it's not just banking. It's every industry that we see as being, incredibly affected by changes in customer behavior that are being enabled by technology. So I think it's, I think it's on all of us to, as leaders in our different institutions, to show that we're changing too, and that we're making strides, and that we're investing in our people to help them make the change. I think that for me, that's the key.
Thank you. Susan Hui?
I think Brendan says it all, is really in our mindset, right? I think as humans, to an extent, we are all creature of habits. What is familiar? And then when there's change, there's always a period that we go through before we accept, and then we move on, and we will persevere, and then we'll come out successful at the end of it. I think for every single one of our staff. The question is, how do we bring them through? The good thing, I think, in the last 4 months, I think heightens an awareness that there is a need for change, because the work environment, the health situation just simply says we have to. And technology is the only way we can get things going and economy going. And because we are essential banking services, then several of our colleagues have to figure out remotely, some in the office, what we need to do, and so on. So I think that hopefully is an external factor that binds us all into the same mindset that we have to move forward. The question is, move forward how, and where can one go, right? Which is both an aptitude as well as opportunities The attitude, I think, in this climate, I think everyone, I would say for the majority, when I've seen all my colleagues and all that, has been extremely professional and positive, and they take it in their stride to move forward, which very proud. And as Singaporean, we should also very proud how we come together as a community. So I think there is the resilience to move forward. The question is aptitude, which is what one likes to do. And then the opportunities, which is what this career fair is trying to do to open up the mindset. And I think with MAS, IBF, and the banks all coming together, hopefully we create a more structured platform so that it's easy, because I see some of the questions is, how do I avail myself to this? Where can I find, and so on? And if we can have, of course, within UOB, for instance, or within DBS, we have our HR departments for our HR, for our own UOB staff. But some may want to look beyond to say, are there other career opportunities outside, and so on. By coming all together, it gives, I think, a visibility of possibilities for people to explore. Yeah. More importantly, before exploring that, is how one prepares oneself for that. And that is really to take opportunity of training, development, but more importantly, I think job opportunities that is created as a result of change. And I'm very sure in our bank, for UOB, for instance, we have huge transformation programs going on, and they're still continuing despite this economic climate. Investments in technology is continuing. We're continuing to reinvent processes. And the good thing within Singapore is that UOB is the regional or the global head office, and we brought our processes redesign into Singapore to look through for the entire region, because we want to unify that experience. I'll give you an example. We just launched, despite the COVID, despite the pandemic and all that, because we felt the market needed it. We knew we had a good winning product because we tested it in Thailand last year. We launched our digital bank in Indonesia called Tomorrow. And the whole process is a digital onboarding process. And Indonesia yet does not have the same digital credentials as what we have, let's say, in Thailand, in Malaysia, or in Singapore, right? But what we did, then we redesigned the customer processes to go in and do video onboarding. So our call center staff are no longer just call center staff taking phone calls on inquiries or complaints. They became front office. They were onboarding our customers, right? As if it's a virtual front office. Now, we couldn't have done that alone just by technology. You need people who has dealt with customers, you need security experts, you need compliance experts, processes, branch people, and to make sure the whole end-to-end process works. And of course, the testing and the usual thing with regards. So there's several of these large programs within UOB, and I'm very, very sure with all the large institutions within Singapore, there are equal amount of transformation programs as going on to digitize. Is how we go about communicating it, but there are opportunities. So for within your institutions, look for those opportunities, put your hands up and try to see how you can participate and start growing that knowledge and experience. Even if it's for a short while and it's not your cup of tea, when you come back into operations, all of a sudden your perspective change and you're no longer just processing. You are looking at your transactions to see how can I serve these customers? Because I happen to think the days where we can outsource to another country, to back office to another country and all that, in time to come, it will be a thing of the past. But what we need to do, our operations people within Singapore are closest to our customers in Singapore. How can we serve them better? How can we turn around an inquiry, an investigation, an advice a lot faster than what we had before, right? And I think those are valuable skills that can be really harnessed. The question is channel it, look for that opportunity. I hope that answers some of questions on the floor, as well as what Namsim was trying to get all of us to think about.
Hello.
Yes, you're back.
There are limitations to technology, you see.
Maybe while we are waiting for Namsing, I could quickly share DBS's experiences,
Sorry,
right? For DBS, we actually started, our journey even as far back as 2015 when we were rethinking our own business strategy, what's the impact on the workforce and all that. And truly, to the question that Nansing posed, right, we had challenges because in that whole phase, the very initial phase that we started 5 years ago, there were naturally fears, anxiety, uncertainty with our colleagues, the resistance and all that, which were all very actually all expected, to be frank. So what actually we thought was helpful through the experiences was actually early engagement with our colleagues. Looking at, where are the opportunities, engaging to look at where could we do matches, what could you learn, and then as a corporate, as a bank, providing a lot of training and upskilling opportunities to help people actually come through the curve. And of course, on our colleagues' part, we are also really glad a lot of people had that open mindset to be able, right, to then say that, look, this is something I'm willing to try, to learn, open up my mindset. And Susan, you're absolutely right. When people who go through that, the kind of stories they share were amazing. How they thought they could never do it, but they could actually find it so fulfilling, that journey. And we thought that kind of sharing actually helped a lot of our other colleagues who are actually also coming up on the same path in terms of a transformation, not only for the company, but also for themselves. Yep. Namsim, back to you.
Thank you. Sorry, it was cut off.
No worries.
Yeah. I'd like to come back to this point about taking the initiative from the employee standpoint and looking for opportunities. So I think between the banks, agencies, IBF, MAS, I think we've been putting together platforms and schemes and programs. But we think it's also very important that the individuals, employees are proactive about learning, about looking for opportunities. I think they all need to go hand in hand. It is also the job of the individuals to look out for opportunities, look out for areas in which he or she needs to improve himself or herself, and and dare to ask, right? Am I suitable for this role, that role, so that the so-called interaction is a proactive one. A lot of times, employees are comfortable in their job. They thought they are doing well, but technology changes can impact the role in double quick time. Right, so we need all parties to actually play a role. I would like to invite our participants to pose more questions if you have. I think we're having a very rich discussions here. So please continue to pose your questions. Maybe a lot of professionals ask that, we specific to their, to skills. What are some of the, the new normal skills that a finance professionals need to have? And if we talk about mid and back office role, just now we discussed that, even mid back office role, they need to be customer centric, right? External customer centric. But what particular skills do they need to equip themselves with in order to ensure that they continue to be relevant to their new roles? Maybe I'd start with Susan Chong.
Yeah. Okay, Namsin. I think in today's context, right, if we talk about operations colleagues, for example, I think from being very skilled in looking at processes, now one skill set that we probably need is to really look at learning digital tools, because that cannot be something that we ignore. Learning how to use digital tools to complement what we are doing, that's probably one. Another very important skill set we thought should be highlighted should be how you are going to be communicating and dealing with people. Because I used to be a back office person, for example, I deal with processes, papers, but now things will change. I would need to provide, for example, like an advisory role, like Brandon or Susan mentioned earlier. Then I need to know exactly what is my customer on the other side thinking. I will be able to communicate with them, understand, and that also links us back to what we call journey thinking, customer journey thinking. I think that's a very valuable skill set in today's context, regardless of where we are, to be able to put the customer at the center of what we are doing, to think from their perspective, and that will actually bring us a very long way. So these are some of the skill sets that I think are actually important. But the last one I'll mention would be, I think, believe that you're able to adapt to learn. Learnability is actually a very important attribute that we are also looking for in our colleagues to actually help us, come through this journey of transformation. That will be how we look at it.
Thank you. Brandon, what are the must-have skills that professionals needs to have?
Yeah, just to build on what Susan mentioned, completely agree. I think generally we're going to see, because of digital straight-through processing and the changes in customer behavior, I think we're generally going to see less sort of simple processing jobs, and we're going to see more what we say, like, more value-added customer-facing roles. So instead of doing data entry for an application, it's really going to be understanding, okay, how is our digital application designed? Is it customer friendly? Where are customers dropping off in the process? So a lot of digital design thinking, a lot of customer journey thinking, process redesign thinking, data analytics. Those are things where I think that will be a great skill set that we look for, and not just in the front office job, or not just in our digital team job. We look for that in our relationship managers. We look for that in our product teams. We look for that in our operations teams. It doesn't, digital is, it's everywhere now, and we need all of our teams to be sensitized to that. And I would say, I just want to mention, this is my 5th country with Citi. So I've been in Portugal, Belgium, Poland, Korea, and now Singapore. And I do have to say, the thinking that MAS and IBF have brought in terms of, the curriculum, the skill, the reskilling, the professional conversion program, the resources that are available in Singapore for financial sector employees and for financial sector institutions to take advantage of, it's like nothing I've seen before. It is a fantastic resource that we have available as financial institutions, and that our employees have access to as well. So I would encourage everyone to really take advantage of it, to build those new skills.
Thank you, Brandon. So, so to add to that, I think we have a question. The question is that, what are some of the major tech skills do you recommend? Maybe Susan Hui can take that questions.
I think that's a very broad question, right? If you take a look at the technology skills, even technology skills can be obsoleted, yeah, because today we talk DevOps, we talk technology stacks. Gone are the days where you just specialize in one machine and you learn the coding on one machine, and then you can be employed for a long time, right? So that has drastically changed. But what has not changed, even in technology today, and tremendously valuable, which we find very, very short, even in technology staff, is the understanding of an entire banking process or product systems, down all the way to risk, onto how data is being used, or to regulatory reporting, or to the accounting and the bookkeeping of it. There are very, very few who understands the end-to-end. We have a lot of specialization. So even then, we are trying to equip our technology staff to learn banking. Yeah. So that it's just not about coding or development, because what are you developing? You're developing for the customer, you're developing for the banking industry, you're developing it to make sure it works, right? Even the payment process today, we look at it so simple, QR code or whatever, swipe a card, it goes through. But actually, if you really understand how to build it, there's settlement, there are risks, how do we pay each other and everything else to make sure the money is accurate. So that knowledge, actually, because we have been specializing in the last, 20 years or whatever it is and all that, there are very few who has that big picture view. Actually, in operations, for the staff who has been in operations for a while and has moved around, you can actually see how actually everything works. So don't short sell yourself, right? You have tremendous knowledge in the mid office and operations, but what skills do we need going forward? If you have an aptitude for technology, Obviously, like what Brandon has said, customer journey designs, process redesigns will be interesting. You can apply, there are technology skills that help you look at the design flow now, that you can learn the tool, but you apply your knowledge to that for those who enjoys that creativity. But for those who enjoys interacting with people, because in operations, much as we do processing, you're also managing, I think for our middle managers, they're also managing pools of people. So within them, within yourselves, you already have people management skills. You are people oriented. How do you pivot that to customer orientation? Yeah, and what Susan from DBS has just said, the soft skills become very important. How do you communicate with the customer? How do you share that empathy? No different from managing a staff, but managing a customer has its nuances. And how do you, bring the customer through? And of course, at the end of the day, a good service, hopefully you get an after sale and the customer becomes a loyal customer of the bank, right? So there are soft skills, there's also hard skills, depending, I think, on your aptitude. Whether you are more a thinker who likes to think about processes and create something, or you are more a people-oriented person, right? And that is aptitude. And maybe the front office is where you could start moving. Like I've mentioned, even the call center today is the front office of the future. Our trade operation staff are highly valuable because they can advise a corporate client if you're dealing with developing countries and you still need letters of credit, what to look out for. And if you go into open accounts, then what is it that you look out for and all that, right? And how to partner that and start building those skills. And then the career paths will open. Yeah. So, just to think about your own self and the aptitude, because each of these roles will require different strengths and different orientation.
Thank you, Susan. There are a few questions surrounding this this topic of permanent versus contract hiring. Given the volatile environment, I guess the question is: banks, do banks prefer to hire contract staff? That's one set of questions. And then there's a concern about technology leading to less employment. I think it's connected as well. And also connected to this is for very senior bank staff, what is the scope, or what are some of the initiatives for banks to retrain and reskill them? So permanent versus contract staff, will banks shrink their total employment because of technology? And how do we reskill very senior staff? Maybe Susan Chong can help to address that question. Susan Chong? I think he's lost. Maybe Brandon can take us through the question.
Yeah, look, so I think obviously when we look at our more senior staff members, there's a lot of skills that they have in terms of leading a team and thinking strategically, depending on the area that the senior banker has been operating in. Now, what we do tend to see is that sometimes the more senior you get, the more the mindset becomes, well, I'm done. I don't need to learn anything new. I'm just gonna, I'm fully baked and done as a right. So I think that one of the big challenges of this environment that we operate in is no matter how senior we all are, and I'm senior, but the first feedback I got from my team in Singapore was like, you never answer your WhatsApp. We send you WhatsApp message, you never answer us. So I had, because I was not a WhatsApp user, so I had to get in the habit of using WhatsApp. So I'm learning every day about how to interact with my team and how to build new skills. I think one of the big challenges that we do see is that the attitude and the aptitude for being open to say, okay, I'm going to learn something new. We look for that in people that we're gonna retrain and give a new skill set to. We do have some people that say look, I'd rather just stick with what I'm doing, but that in this environment that tends to be a medium to long term mistake, because things move very, very rapidly. But we remain committed to trying our best to get the right people with the right skills, because even our senior people, they've got the leadership skills, they've got the experience to really bring, transformation and help make it happen. The middle management layer is very, very important in making a transformation happen. So I think, the first thing we would look for is can we retrain our senior leadership to be much more transformation oriented, as opposed to just more BAU execution, because we need that leadership and that seniority and that visibility to help make that transformation happen.
Thank you, Brandon. Yes, yeah. Susan Chong, you also want to comment on these particular questions?
Sorry, Namsim, I got cut off momentarily.
Yeah, no, the question is about permanent versus contract staff. So given the environment, there are some observation that banks prefer to hire contract staff. And then what about opportunities to reskill more senior professionals?
I think how we look at permanent versus contract staff, Namsim, is really looking at, is there permanency to the role? If there is, then we should be hiring permanent staff for the particular role. And of course, the use of contract workforce is usually, for the shorter terms roles that we have or projects that we have. And I think, in how we look at it, that's where the complementary workforce will always come into play. And I think it's not unusual for organizations to actually have a mix of both workforce, which probably is very necessary in the context in which we operate. And of course, to your other question, I think there's a constant need for us to be upskilling our workforce. So for example, if there are skill sets that we are short of, I think the need for us to upskill our staff along that trajectory of the skill sets that we need after identifying a skills gap in the organization is extremely important.
Thank you. Let me see what other questions do we have. There's a question on how compliance, I'm paraphrasing here, how the function of compliance, I guess the question is how it will change, becoming more streamlined. So how do we see compliance function transform, by technology or by, I think the word here is streamlined financial sector. Susan Hui, you want to take this question?
I think we all know the compliance. The standards for compliance has evolved for the industry as a whole, and many of the banks have invested in technology and even more technology to come in order to make sure we all in the banking fraternity play our part in ensuring that businesses are of the right standard, secure, safe, and sound, right? What I've seen, no difference in just like in early operations, where in the beginning it was just a lot of grunt work, yeah, where you have a lot of false positives, and people has to take a look at it and do clear, and it's never ending, right? Because transactional patterns, behaviors, and all that change. But over the last, I think I would say, 5-6 years or so, I think all the institutions, we have started putting in machine learning, AI, where we knock off as much of the false positives, looking at patterns and behaviors of individual customers as much as possible, so that it narrows the set that we need to go in and to investigate and then to see what we need to do. I think we are still far from over. We are looking at now applying, even within UOB, how we apply machine learning to more complex models, because when you deal with the large number of transactions that we have, not just in Singapore, but for us across the region, right? We think there is still room to be more accurate in the way of predicting whether or identifying transactions that may be suspicious. Because 90%, even in our false positives today, 90% of them are just simply what it is, false positives. So how do we narrow that, right? And as a result, at this point in time, the grunt work, there is a lot of people doing those work. In time to come, it will evolve, yeah. And I would hope that it will evolve quicker than slower. because I don't think it's really meaningful work going in to do all this investigation, not very satisfying. And worse still, I think some of them result in poor customer experience and decisions. Yeah. The question is, what roles can compliance officers play, right? I think, again, like I said, if we think that is actually, even within the false positive set, more than 90% are actually legitimate transactions for whatever reasons, yeah? Just unexplainable or behaviors are legit. So therefore, for this set of customers that we want to keep, can our compliance or compliance assurance, compliance teams and all that, again, play a more customer advisory role on how to get customers, or how do we design our onboarding process to make them more friendly to these set of customers who are legitimate and doing businesses. Keeping obviously still one set that is really important when you deal with the real issue of compliance and anti-money laundering and everything else, where we truly need them to go into real investigative, and we probably need to discover the web of transactions that requires real skills that needs to do that. So I think that will be a pivot, just like what we are seeing in the pivot in our back office and middle offices, from the more mundane type of work to more value adding, more advisory, more thinking, more critical analysis, more problem solving, and bringing value to our stakeholders, including our customers.
Thank you. So we have come to the end of our allotted time, unfortunately. There's a lot of rich discussion, but perhaps we can conclude with this last question and then offer your final words of wisdom, half a minute each perhaps. So the question is, since learnability has been painted as a key attribute that influences hiring decision, does this allude to the financial industry weighing more on the demonstrated ability to acquire new skills over relevant experience in the hiring decision? So Brandon, is experience now less important than ability to learn? And your words of wisdom, half a minute.
Yeah, look, I think they're both important, because I think experience, it helps a lot because you understand customer behavior, you understand financial services, but experience coupled with an openness to learning new skills is even better. So I think they're both important. I would say, one of the things, sometimes the younger hires, they tend to be just more open because they're less established in their career. So they have that innate openness because they're just starting out in their careers. I think if we can all try to, bring some of that openness, to our day to day, I think that would be the magic formula. So for me, like, my biggest advice for the people on this call is really always be learning. And there was a quote I just saw yesterday that life starts at the end of your comfort zone. So if you're ever in your comfort zone, that's probably a signal that, we should all be doing something a little, like pushing ourselves a little bit more.
Thank you. Susan Chong?
Nazim, I really think the answer to this question is really there needs to be a balance. I think for every organization to be successful, you probably need a mix of people with the experiences and people with the aptitude or the skill sets to be able to learn. But having said that, I think learning is two-way. If I'm, for example, an experienced person, I can also learn from somebody who might not be experienced as me in the domain knowledge that I have as subject matter expertise. So there are a lot of things to learn from each other. But personally, I think as an organization, we should be going for a mix of both. We have a responsibility to be grooming the younger generation, that's one. At the same time, we also have the responsibility for our colleagues to be providing the environment where everyone can continue to learn. And the last point I have, like what I mentioned earlier, it will be such a waste not to be able to learn from the very experienced colleagues we have in the banking industry who bring with them all the wealth of experiences. And I think it's a great thing for them to be able to share. And through the process, we have heard from our colleagues, they also learn very different things, sometimes things that surprises themselves. So I think it's not one or other, but it's actually a combination of both.
Thank you. Susan Hui.
If I can ask all our operations colleagues or mid-career executives or professionals on this call, think about how you have gained your experience up to today is because you have been learning. So the ability to learn is there. So don't forget that. And it's important to continue to learn. And that's very, very important in this digital era. And it's reminding ourselves too, and that I need to learn every day. And it is a practice that you have to bring to bear. You mustn't forget that. Because the brain is a muscle and needs to be exercised every day. And that, if there's anything, is very, very important to have faith and to be confident. For you to have come to this stage with that amount of experience that you have, you can learn. And learning doesn't stop with age. So that's very important, right? So I want to set that stage first so that we can understand that. So all things being equal, depending on the job that we are looking, like what Susan Chong from DBS has said, right, is if I'm looking for a job at a very senior level, leading a very high risk function, obviously experience counts because you can't afford to be in a senior position leading and you don't have the right experience to lead the team. Yeah. But having said that, if I have two candidates with the same level of experience, then obviously the one that demonstrates learning ability, agility, and curiosity to learn and humble enough to learn and yet have the experience, that obviously will be an added advantage. Yeah. Of course, then we talk about very junior positions when experience is just an entry level. Then there's no experience to talk about other than qualifications from school, which school, which grades. And these days grades, I'm not sure whether it counts anymore. But assuming, all grades being equal, again, the person that demonstrates the hunger to learn, even if they're same grades, the one that demonstrates the hunger to learn will have an added advantage. That's how I would balance it. But it's very important. I think what I want to say is the backdrop that for every one of you who is on this call, for your experience, you have demonstrated the ability to learn. So don't forget that and don't lose that and continue to exercise the most important muscle that we have, which is our brains.
Thank you. Thank you. So I guess it leaves me now to thank our panelists for very open sharing, insightful sharing. I hope our participants have so-called got away with useful tips on how to prepare themselves for the future, prepare themselves for the impact of technology. So if there are any questions pertaining to the schemes that we discussed, the idea that we discussed, if you don't know how to navigate, by all means give IBF a call, send us an email, and we will try to help you with your questions. So with this, let me thank our panelists again, Brandon, Susan Hui, Susan Chong, for taking time to be here this morning. So have a good day to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Namsim. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.